All right, our first task today is going to be sanding this down. So I'm going to use the belt sander to go over this tabletop. And then once we have that sanded down, I'll sand the other side, and then we'll start to figure out what we're going to do for the face. That's today's project. Enjoy. Top all sanded off with the belt sander. I forgot to put the camera on while I was doing that, but it was kind of boring and tedious. Suffice to say, it's been sanded. I did both sides. I'm not sure how I feel about the plugs that I put in. This side is just filled in, nail holes filled in with some wood filler. Side filled in with the plugs. The plugs do take away some of the staining, but the plugs are quite visible, and I'm not sure if they just kind of look like a patch as opposed to, I don't know, I kind of think of this as, although it's spotty, it somehow feels a little more honest. I'm not sure. So I'll put that little debate on which is going to be the top side on pause. Let me know in the comments, please, what you think looks better, the plug side or the filled side. There's our filled side. There's our plugged side. Yeah, so welcome your feedback. So next thing that I'm going to do is figure out the position of the legs. So I'm going to start by marking the center. Then I want to have the legs, I'm figuring they're probably going to be about 15 degrees or 60 degrees off the side here. So 2 here and then 2 at 60 degrees. So I'll figure out those marks and get a rough idea of where the legs could go. Okay, I kind of got the lines roughly 60 degrees here. The important part is that they're equidistant from the center. So that gives us a leg here, 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 and here. So I'm just kind of marking now the outside edge of the leg. And from that, I will start to derive the shape of the face piece that we want to put on here. And I can see already this shape is a nice even curve, which is good for that face. This one is going to be a little more interesting because it comes down on a gentle curve here, almost the same radius as that, pretty close to it. But then when it gets here, it makes a very sharp left-hand turn. So that's going to be a bit of an odd piece, and I may wind up having to spline a couple pieces together. Although I don't think I'll spline, I think I'll dovetail a couple pieces together to make this joint here, but we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so I've got a good visual now on where the legs are going to be. And I want to mark kind of a 1/2 inch inset on where that face is going to reside. So I'll kind of scribe that line on here and then bring you in for a close look to see. You can see kind of the challenge that I've got, particularly in this section and this section, when it comes to making that curve. So we'll be back in a second. All right, I've got you in for a closer look. So I have scribed 2 lines which represent where I want the face of this, for this piece to be. So we'll go around here, meet up with a leg that sits in there, continue along, meet up with the leg that sits in here, go along, make that sharp turn and meet up with the leg that sits in here. So, good news, this is the material that I want to use for that face. This is obviously a very rough board, but I want it to sit in there. So if I mark this edge, or place this edge on that corner, that represents the inside of the face where it touches the leg. And I do the same up here where it's going to meet the inside face of the leg there. What I'm wanting to do is make sure now that there is nothing. You can see I just touched the line there. So I think, it looks like I'm off in fact there. Yeah, that's supposed to be there. So the entire face is then contained within this section of wood, even with this hard turn here. So I don't need to do any splining. I can make this out of one piece. It'd be an interesting bandsaw cut, and I'll probably make a template to place on the piece to make that cut. But I'm pleased with that. What I noticed, however, is looking at this curve, I thought, well, this is a nice gentle transition from this sharp curve to a more gentle curve here. On this side, it's very much a hard right turn. So I traced on this piece of paper this edge, did it on that side, then I had to transcribe it onto this side. And I put it over here just to kind of see where that edge is going. And I discovered that I'm out by, here, I'm out by a good 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to trim this edge off here just a little bit to make it closer to that, to make it closer to this edge. So it's a little more symmetrical and a little less of a sharp turn there. It's a little more gentle bend. So I'll make that little change there, retranscribe this line, and then transfer that line onto a template, and then we'll start cleaning up these pieces. I've got 3 of them. I may not need all 3. I might be able to get away with 2, but we'll clean up these pieces on these edges here so that I can run it through the bandsaw and make these face pieces. So I just trimmed up this edge using the benchtop belt sander, and then retraced the line, and you can see that I have come in quite a bit from where it used to be. So this is a much more uniform curve compared to to the other side. So similar angle now. Okay, next thing that I want to do, I realized I made a mistake when I was marking out these legs. I put parallel lines here where I thought the leg was going to sit, but this parallel lines along the 60-degree thing would only work if this was a circle with that circumference, and it's not. What I need to do is make these lines here perpendicular to the tangent of this arc here. So in order to do that, what I'm going to be doing is measuring out a fixed amount on each side of the center line. The center line is what I want. So I'll measure out a fixed amount from that center line, and then I can come in the same amount on each side, and I'll get a perpendicular line here. So I'm going to work on that, get these lines centered where I want. The reason I want to have that line running perfectly, squared off against the tangent, is to cater for these face pieces that are going to meet up against that leg. So it's important to have that accurate and that mark right. Okay, my leg lines are revised, so the leg is going to sit here. That'll make it perpendicular, perpendicular to the tangent of the leg. So I got that one and that one set. In the meantime, I'm going to trim up the edges on these rough pieces that I've got here so that I can set them on the bandsaw comfortably, knowing that they're perpendicular. So I'm just going to square up the edges on this stock. So using a bed rail technique, just get a nice straight edge on this, spin this around, get a straight edge on that. So I do the same with this piece. Okay, I got both pieces now, the rough blanks cut to the same height, so I can use these now to mark on a template and get them on the bandsaw to cut them off, cut the curve that I want for the piece. So it turned out to be a little bit thinner than, it's just over 3 inches here. I was hoping for a little bit more, but I think it'll still work out just fine. So a lot of this is kind of experiment and see how it goes. I'm not making these to spec, so I'm not making these to order, I'm making them to spec, so. We'll see how this works out. So next piece, create the templates. So to make a template that I can stick onto the top of these pieces that we just cut on the table saw, cleaned up the edge on there, it occurred to me, why don't I just make the template on tape, then I can just peel it off here and stick it on there. So I'm going to try that. So the first thing I want to do is do that 1/2 inch outside edge. Now do the inside edge. The benefit of doing this is I get to pick the best parts of the wood as well. I can avoid all the nail holes. Then we have a template. This piece I'll just cut off about here and here. This piece I can cut here and here and here, make 3 cuts, 1, 2, 3. Then I have pieces that I can handle on the bandsaw pretty easily and make those cuts. Okay, to the bandsaw. Make some cuts, see what happens. So those cuts seem to have gone reasonably well. That's gonna line up pretty nicely on this line, and this guy. Yep, he's gonna do well too. Not nearly as nice a finish as I get on the arcs, so I can, there are little imperfections as the blade wanders a little bit. I'm not an incredibly accurate bandsaw user. I get envious when I watch Matthias Wendell, for example, use his bandsaw. The guy can follow a line unbelievably well. He's got bandsaw skills. Don't know about his nunchuck skills, but he's got great bandsaw skills. So I'm going to give these a sand just to kind of smooth them out a little bit, get rid of the bandsaw marks. And then we'll move on to the legs. We'll get the legs cut and tapered. And then we can start thinking about attaching these face pieces to those legs. So the face pieces are now sanded, mostly on the outside. I did a little bit on the inside as well. Next step, we'll be doing the legs. Let's get the legs cut to length and tapered the way we want them. First, I'm going to have a bite of lunch. So I've got our legs just laid out here. These are the rough blanks laid out on the table saw, and I have marked where I'm going to start the cuts. So getting rid of the bad parts of the wood. So I'm going to make a cut right here to get rid of this groove. I'm going to make a cut on this leg here to get rid of that knot. This one's clean at the top, so I can just square off that end. And this one has a little bit of a rough tear out here, so I'm going to cut it there. Having made those cuts, then I can measure the 29 inches down and cut them off to length. So that's where we are now. Back in a sec when I have the camera set up and ready to cut these. Now measure these to length and cut them off. I'm going to make these legs 29 inches. The top is about 1 inch thick, so total table height is going to be about 30 inches. Just going to line these legs up, clamp them, and I'll make one single cut. Just realized how well the dust collector works. I don't know if you saw dust flying out the back of the saw. It's because I got the dust collector currently hooked up to the band saw, not to the table saw. So I don't see that dust flying out when the dust collector is collected. So I know it certainly is working. All right, the legs are now cut to length, so I'll put my tapering jig back on the saw. And we'll get these legs tapered the way we like them. And I'm going to get the dust collector connected to this saw. All right, got the leg tapering jig set up. 4 blanks ready to go, oriented the way that we want to put them in the jig. So 4 passes per leg and away we go. Just like that, our legs are cut. I'm going to make that little decorative element in the legs right now before I get too much farther along. So I'll set the saw for that and come back when I'm ready. We're going to make these cuts at 4 inches. So just a simple cut, rotate it 4 times, put up the next leg. I'll put this on time lapse so it'll be a little faster. It's repetitive and fast. And just like that, our little decorative element is done. I'm going to take a little bit of time now and take care of any blemishes that are on the wood. Little hole there, a little nail hole there. So I'm going to fill those in. Some of the cracks, like around this knot, I'm just going to use some resin and put that in there. Let the fill and the resin, if needed, set up, and then I'm going to sand these guys. Okay, and we're done. You may have noticed that I went over some of these pieces a couple times. The first time is I like to let the crazy glue kind of soak right into the crevice deep in there, and then it gets a chance to seal down pretty low. Then I'll spray on the hardener to set it. And then a minute later I'll come back and I'll fill in some more glue just to kind of fill up the void. So there's no gaps in there. That's the intent. So two coats of resin, as it were. Sometimes three. Anyway, I'm going to let these pieces now set, and we'll bring the tabletop back over and start cutting the ends of our face pieces. Just bringing you kind of up close to see what I do here for these end bits. So I've placed this face on the table where the outside is going to meet the junction of the leg and the top. So I have two lines here. So that represents this face, this side of the leg. The face of the leg is here. So I know that I want to, and I have lined up the piece at the other end so that the face is meeting the edge of the leg here. So with those places now identified, I can mark here where I want to cut, and on this side where I want the blade to come through. And I'll do the same up here. So I have a mark where I want that. I'm going to be cutting here, but at an angle that would make this perpendicular. So I'll set this up when I get the piece back up against the miter fence. It'll be a little bit clearer in case you missed it on the last video. I brought you up real close for this one. So I have two marks that I'm going to be using on the piece here. One is this little tick down here on the bottom. I'm going to make sure that the blade sits over here on this side of it, but I just want to touch that. And this mark here, this line, I want to make sure that it is right up against the edge of this hole here, where the blade will follow through. So if that is lined up there, and this is lined up against the edge of the blade, I know I'm getting a perfectly vertical cut there, which will follow the line that we have on our tabletop to butt up against the leg. So I have this piece all clamped where it should be. I'll make this cut. Then we'll make another 5 cuts. I'll put that on time lapse too, so you don't have to watch me set up every one. So I did reasonably well with these cuts, but this one I got messed up. The angle here should be like this, and it's more like this. So I'm gonna have to take, it looks like about 1/16 of an inch off this front face. And on the back, the angle is supposed to be like this, and it's more like this. So, instead of being, it's not parallel with the back at all. So I'm going to take another, just a little bit less than 1/16 off one side of this. So I've marked it up, put it back on the saw. What this does mean though is that the rear legs are going to be a little bit farther in than what I had originally planned. Not a big deal. And going to be off by 1/16 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch. So Whether it's 3/4 of an inch off the back or 7/8 of an inch off the back, no big deal. So I'll make that little adjustment here and come back when that's done. All right, fixed up this piece here. You can see that we have some good lining up on that line there. That's going to be good. This one over here is going to be sitting well. And on this side, over here we're lining up well. Down here we're lining up well. You can see I'm out by about 1/8 of an inch, 1/16, maybe 3/32 there. But I am parallel. And over here, again, I am parallel, maybe off by 3/30 seconds or 1/8 of an inch. But okay. So what I'll do now is just do some final sanding. Again, this is 80 grit on these face pieces. I'm going to do a little bit of filling in here. I'll fix that up. There's a couple little wormholes that I'm going to take care of here and here. A couple more over here. And then, then we'll do a good sand on the legs, take care of the sharp corners on those legs. So a lot of sanding. I'll come back when that's all complete and we're ready to cut the dovetails. All right, pieces are all sanded. You can see them here just kind of loosely sitting in the table. We're ready now to make all our dovetail joints. But I'm going to call that a video for today. Again, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next video when we join all this stuff together.